It is 1886. A railroad station in North Redwood, Minnesota. A watch shipment arrives, nobody claims it. A young railroad agent named Richard Warren Sears buys the watches himself. He sells them to other station agents fast, for a profit. Within months, he isn't working the railroad anymore. He is selling watches by mail full-time. That accident becomes the R.W. Sears Watch Company. 2 years later, he brings on a watch repairman named Alva Roebuck. In 1893, the name changes to Sears, Roebuck and Company. Nobody could have guessed it. A lost box of watches becomes the seed of the largest retailer on Earth. Here is the problem Sears solved. In the 1890s, most Americans don't live in cities. They live on farms, far from stores, at the mercy of small-town shopkeepers who can charge whatever they want. There is no competition, no price transparency, no alternative. Sears offers one, a catalog mailed straight to the farmhouse, filled with everything: clothing, tools, furniture, guns, bicycles, even build it yourself houses shipped in pieces by rail. The slogan says it plainly: the cheapest supply house on earth. Rural families call it the consumer's Bible. For millions of people, it is genuinely the first time in their lives they can compare prices, order something, and trust it will arrive. In 1895, a Chicago clothier named Julius Rosenwald buys into the company. He brings discipline the founder lacks: real accounting, reliable delivery, a money-back guarantee that actually gets honored. Under Rosenwald, the catalog swells past 1,000 pages. Sears builds a mail order plant in Chicago so large that efficiency experts study it like a factory. By the 1920s, Sears is shipping millions of packages a year to nearly every rural address in America. It is not just a company. It is the way an entire generation buys everything it owns. Rosenwald's ambition doesn't stop at logistics. Starting in 1908, Sears sells entire houses by mail. The Sears Modern Homes Catalog. A family picks a floor plan, orders it, and receives a boxcar full of pre-cut, numbered lumber, ready to assemble. Over the next 3 decades, Sears ships roughly 70,000 kit homes across the country, many of them still standing today. Rosenwald also becomes one of the era's most significant philanthropists, using his Sears fortune to fund thousands of schools for black children across the segregated South. A program historians credit with reshaping rural education for an entire generation. The company Richard Sears, started as a watch hustle, has become something close to American infrastructure. Then the country changes, and Sears changes with it. Cars spread, roads improve. Farmers start driving into town. Rural free delivery matters less when people can shop in person. Under President Robert Wood, a former Army general, Sears makes a bold bet in the 1920s: open physical retail stores. It is a gamble against the company's own core business. It pays off spectacularly. By the 1930s, Sears has hundreds of stores. It becomes the anchor tenant of choice for the shopping malls that spread across post-war America. By the 1960s and 70s, Sears is the largest retailer in the United States, selling everything from Kenmore appliances to Craftsman tools to Allstate car insurance, sold right at the store counter. In 1973, Sears opens its new headquarters, the Sears Tower in Chicago. At the time, the tallest building on the planet, a literal monument to retail dominance. But dominance breeds a dangerous idea that the core business will always be there, so the company should look elsewhere for growth. Through the 1980s, Sears goes all in on diversification. It already owns Allstate Insurance, launched decades earlier inside its stores. Now it acquires Dean Witter Reynolds, a major stock brokerage. It buys Coldwell Banker, a national real estate firm. In 1985, it launches the Discover Card, a credit card meant to compete with Visa and MasterCard. Executives call the new strategy socks and stocks, selling you a sweater and a stock portfolio in the same building. On paper, it looks like genius. A one-stop shop for a family's entire financial and material life. In practice, it is a distraction at the worst possible moment. While Sears executives chase brokerage fees and insurance premiums, a very different kind of retailer is quietly eating its lunch. Walmart, built on relentless everyday, low prices, and ruthless logistics, expands from a regional chain into a national juggernaut. Kmart undercuts Sears on price. Category specialists like Home Depot and Best Buy compete Sears in tools and electronics, the exact departments Sears used to own outright. Sears stores start to feel dated. Inventory feels stale. The financial services businesses generate profit, but they don't fix the leaking retail core. and critics inside and outside the company argue the conglomerate structure lets executives ignore the warning signs for years. The retail core has its own self-inflicted wound too. In 1992, California regulators, after an undercover investigation, accused Sears auto centers of recommending and charging customers for repairs they didn't actually need, allegedly driven by internal sales quotas placed on service advisors. Sears denies wrongdoing but settles the case, pays restitution to affected customers, and drops the commission structure investigators pointed to. The episode is well documented in regulatory filings and news coverage of the era, and it leaves a lasting dent in the trust that built the company in the first place. The same trust that once made a mail order guarantee means something to a farmer who had never met the person selling him a plow. By the early 1990s, the damage is visible in the numbers. In 1992, Sears posts what is then the largest annual loss in American retail history. Something has to give. In January 1993, Sears makes a decision that stuns the country. It kills the catalog, the big book, the 97-year-old institution that basically invented American mail order shopping is shut down for good. The company says it is no longer profitable enough to justify the cost of printing and mailing it. To many, it feels less like a business decision and more like a symbolic surrender. The exact tool that built Sears abandoned because Sears itself had stopped tending it. Sears also starts reversing its diversification. Dean Witter Discover is spun off as an independent public company in 1993. Coldwell Banker is sold. Allstate is spun off in 1995. The strategy that management once called visionary is dismantled piece by piece. A tacit admission that socks and stocks pulled focus away from the one thing that mattered, winning at retail. But the retreat comes years too late. Walmart has already passed Sears in total sales. The discount model has already won. And a new threat is emerging that nobody at Sears takes seriously enough, early enough: online shopping. Here is the part that stings most in hindsight. Sears had already glimpsed this future once, and let it go. Back in 1984, Sears partnered with IBM to launch Prodigy, one of the very first consumer online services, offering electronic shopping years before most Americans had ever heard of the internet. It is a genuinely early bet on digital retail, but Prodigy never becomes a priority inside a company busy chasing brokerage accounts and insurance premiums. And by 1999, the service quietly shuts down, sold off years earlier, and left behind by faster-moving competitors. In 1994, Amazon launches as an online bookstore. Sears, a company built entirely on the idea of ordering from a printed catalog and having it shipped to your door, is on paper perfectly positioned to dominate e-commerce. It already has the warehouses. It already has the logistics. It already has 100 years of mail, order muscle memory, plus a decade's head start from Prodigy. Instead, having just killed its catalog, Sears treats the internet as a side project rather than the future of its entire original business model. By the time Sears takes online retail seriously, Amazon has already become the default place Americans shop, and the moment Sears was uniquely built to seize twice has passed it by for good. The 2000s bring a new chapter and a new kind of leader. In 2005, hedge fund manager Edward Lampert orchestrates a merger between Sears and Kmart, itself a struggling discount chain fresh out of its own bankruptcy. The combined company, Sears Holdings, is framed publicly as a retail turnaround, but Lampert, who becomes chairman and later CEO, reportedly runs the company more like an investment portfolio than a department store chain. He split Sears into dozens of separate internal business units, each required to compete for capital and even charge each other for shared services. Critics, including former executives who later spoke publicly, argued this internal competition undermined coordination and starved stores of the reinvestment they badly needed: aging fixtures, thin staffing, and shelves that increasingly sat half-empty. Meanwhile, Lampert's firm ESL Investments is Sears Holdings' largest shareholder, and also, over time, becomes one of its major lenders and landlords through a series of financial arrangements. Sears sells off store properties in sale, leaseback deals, trading long-term real estate assets for short-term cash. Iconic brands get sold or licensed away. Craftsman tools go to Stanley Black & Decker in 2017. It isn't the first time Sears has cycled a beloved brand in and out. Sears had bought a majority stake in the clothing retailer Lands' End back in 2002, hoping its mail order pedigree would translate. By 2014, with the core business bleeding cash, Sears spins Lands' End back out as its own public company, another piece of the empire quietly detached to keep the rest afloat. According to bankruptcy filings, some of these transactions were later scrutinized by creditors as benefiting Lampert's own investment vehicles at the expense of the retailer itself, though Lampert has maintained the deals were intended to keep the company afloat. Whatever the intent, the outcome is stark. A once dominant retailer slowly sold for parts to fund its own survival. Store by store, brand by brand. Store closures accelerate through the 2010s, hundreds of Sears and Kmart locations shut every year. Sears Canada, once a separate publicly traded subsidiary, collapses into its own bankruptcy and liquidation in 2017, closing all remaining stores and cutting thousands of jobs. Same-store sales fall year after year in the parent company as well. Employees and shoppers describe stores with broken escalators, dimmed lighting to cut costs, and empty shelves that never get restocked. Customers who once trusted the Sears name for reliable Kenmore appliances and die-hard batteries increasingly find better prices, broader selection, and faster delivery from Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and above all Amazon, the exact company Sears was structurally positioned to have beaten decades earlier at its own game. Even the skyline quietly admits the decline. Sears had already moved its headquarters out of downtown Chicago to suburban Hoffman Estates back in 1993, the same year it killed the catalog. In 2009, the company that once built the tallest building on Earth sells the naming rights to its old tower entirely. It becomes the Willis Tower, named for an insurance broker with no historical tie to Sears at all. The building still stands. The name on it doesn't. On the 15th of October 2018, Sears Holdings files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. At the time of filing, the company still operates around 700 stores, a tiny fraction of its peak, and tens of thousands of employees lose their jobs in the closures that follow. It is a stunning fall for a company that once accounted for roughly 1% of America's entire gross national product. In early 2019, Lampert's ESL Investments, through a new entity, purchases the remaining core assets out of bankruptcy, keeping roughly 400 stores alive under new ownership. But the rescue is narrow. Store counts keep shrinking in the years after, down to a small handful of locations still operating, a ghost of the empire that once mailed catalogs to nearly every household in America. So what actually killed Sears? Not one single blow, but a long chain of decisions that each made sense in isolation and disastrous in combination. A company built on serving underserved customers with unbeatable prices and convenience slowly drifted toward chasing financial engineering instead of retail fundamentals. It diversified into banking and insurance right as discount retailers ate its lunch on price. It killed the very catalog that could have been its bridge into e-commerce, then watched Amazon build that future instead. And in its final chapter, it fell under leadership that treated the company less like a retailer to be revived and more like a portfolio to be harvested for value. The lesson is simple, and it is why Sears still matters as a case study today. Being first, being biggest, even being genuinely beloved by generations of customers, guarantees nothing. The moment a company stops obsessing over the customer in front of it and starts obsessing over the balance sheet, instead, the decline may take decades to finish, but it has already begun.